Oh, I'm so hungover today.
What happened? Oh, yeah, you were at the pub quiz.
Went to pub quiz, yeah. Smashed it, came second.
Yeah, that's good. I'm so
Mhm.
bad at pub quizzes. I've done a few.
I mean, if it was up to me, if Lizzie wasn't there and it was just me, I would have easily come last. She knows everything. I don't know anything.
I was doing beatboxing while you were away.
That was nice. Okay, well, Michael's in the lobby, so
Hey,
shall I let him in?
time to wake him up.
Nice to meet you, Michael.
Yeah, nice to meet you, man.
Nice to meet you guys too. Been following the podcast a bit. Haven't listened to a full episode because my attention span is a bit. I'm not a podcast person, but yeah, bits and pieces have followed the progress and everything.
Nice.
Cool,
Well,
man.
if we're converting you toward podcasting, is that's nice. I'll take that as a win. That's good. You were one of the people that was tagged in one of the posts that I did on LinkedIn 2-3 weeks ago, and we've seen your name around a few times in the past, but we actually never spoke. So this is the first time. But yeah, thank you for whoever suggested Michael to jump in. It's happening. So yeah, it's working.
My friend Drakatos, Mr. SEO, yeah. So shout out.
There you go. Shout out to him. So yeah, no, that's great. And also, as a segue to this, I should mention, because this is quite new, but on Spotify, for those who listen on Spotify, I actually put a question that you can answer as a Q&A for every episode directly on Spotify that we will see,
Cool.
that we could use for future episodes. And also, there is a poll option. So for every episode, we'll put a little question when you listen to this. If you're on Spotify, as you're listening, you can interact with the content, and we'll see it.
Spotify really pushing for the engagement that you can't get through Apple.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the stuff that I was trying to do through a WhatsApp group before, they're kind of trying to take that on board and build some more interaction with it, which is quite cool.
Oh, very cool.
But anyways, Michael, do you mind giving us a elevator pitch of who you are and what you do, what you did, and what you do in a couple of minutes? That would be great, just as an intro.
I've been in growth marketing for the past 7 years. I have a marketing background from university, so I come from the not so like the more marketing fundamental side as a background. I worked with Oren Greenberg at Kurve for 3.5 years. That was pretty much the start of my career. I was remote back in Greece before remote was a thing.
Nice.
And that was a huge shortcut for me getting into growth and having access to big clients. Because without Orange network and professional status, I wouldn't have had access to those things. So that provided me with a huge shortcut, and I generally recommend agency side when you're starting out because it's like a portfolio. Like you get access to multiple clients at once. You're not really. It doesn't really matter if you go to a bad client or a bad situation because you have multiple other avenues. So it's kind of a de-risk. Yes, and after 3.5 years there, having seen a lot of different scenarios, scenarios that I liked, scenarios I didn't like, I felt like I wanted to focus and go client side. I went to manual and the DTC space, and this was a great step for me because the team there was so good that it was overkill for a DTC website. Like everyone was so switched on there. I came from a CEO who was in performance
Oh
marketing.
yeah, you worked with George George Palace.
Georgia with George.
Yeah, that's good. You know, he was my boss at Deliveroo.
Oh, I knew he was a deliverer. Didn't know that he managed. He was amazing. Yeah, so this, let's say, performance and metric data-driven mindset was running through the whole company. It was amazing to see. And then I jumped to Bleach London, which was kind of the opposite situation. Like the product was super differentiated and creative, but it wasn't a data-driven performance marketing company. Obviously, not saying that that's wrong because they built an amazing brand and it was retail first. But there, I had a lot more scope to call the shots and be, the person in charge of the commercial metrics and all that. So combining these two experiences gave me, I think, quite a 360, let's say, makes 360 strong word, but I'm not gonna count out degrees now. Yeah, with these two, then the next step at Silverbird is where I guess I get to combine the two experience, like being the person in charge for the growth function and being in a data-driven, performance-oriented environment. I'm really excited about Silverbird.
It's interesting about Bleach because it looks like you were there like bang in the middle of the pandemic, and it'd be interesting to know if they saw like an increase, because I personally used bleach to bleach my hair in the pandemic. So I'm like, I'm not at work. I can I can try dyeing my hair.
No performance marketing will ever match the impact of COVID alone. Like they were doing a lot of creative things that were performing, but were not standard performance marketing. And were hosting. It was before I went. They were hosting bleach parties with celebrities and all that, tapping into the founders' network. You had Georgia Jagger, who's also one of the investors, doing her hair live on camera on a Zoom link. Like these things were, creativity at its finest. You won't see them on a dashboard like that using Google Analytics. But...
Yeah, that's cool. It's amazing how a brand can just come along and like turn an industry or a product that is, people have been bleaching their hair and dyeing their hair for a long time, but then a brand can come and twist it in a certain way that suddenly the brand becomes bigger than the product itself, and just it makes the industry cool. I love that kind of thing.
Yeah. What was the bleach you used? Which color? I can't remember.
I just used clear. It was just straight to bleach. It was just straight bleached, white blonde.
Oh man!
But you never saw me. It was. I wore a hat, and when I was at home, I did it. When I was out in the street, it was fine. But when I was at work, literally getting on a Zoom call, and one day your hair's dark like this, and the next day it's blonde. Obviously, everyone's like, "Oh, he bleached his hair." But it's cool. It works.
I'm jealous, man. Did you go bleach before manual or after manual? Because there's a common theme there about hair loss and then hair bleaching. And I feel a bit, under attack because I don't have any left.
You don't know what we're talking about.
Hair, but I know about manual, but I think I'm past the point that you can actually recover the losses. So yeah, I feel like there's a bit of a. Which one was first? Manual was first. First you recover your hair loss, and then you bleach your hair, and then you lose them again.
The only thing that can help you is you need Jesus. You need a miracle.
Yeah, you just start to go to church. Yeah. Nice one. One of the things that I saw you I think reshared on your LinkedIn recently, there was from someone talking about dark social, the dark funnel versus the light funnels. And obviously, from what you're saying, Bleach was more of a brand activation, celebrity type of marketing versus manual, which was very data-driven, very performance-driven. And I thought we would just spend a few minutes talking about that concept of that is quite recent. Like I've heard the term dark funnel or dark social in recent month, or maybe in the last year or so. But I don't think that's something that's very commonly known what that means, and where this is going in terms of making the link with attribution and things like that. But yeah, I'll leave it to you, Michael. Like, tell me what you thought of that, and we can go from there.
About the dark funnel, I think it's a term that's derived from this new age of marketers that are spoiled, thinking that they knew everything. In fact, it's nothing new. Like when you were in the 70s doing a TV ad in the Mad Men era, you wouldn't have attribution on the ad, and although like it was always the case. You were doing correlations, and you knew when things worked. The famous quote about half my advertising cost is wasted. I just don't know which half. It's kind of true today. Like we don't live in the same era. We have the tools to measure a bit more, but there's not everything that counts can be counted. Like that's a thing that holds true even to this day. Even when you do a performance marketing campaign and the campaign is smashing it, it's not the campaign you set up on Facebook or Google that did it. It's all the elements that are below this layer that enable you to have this success. And uh, being laser focused into your tools and your dashboards and thinking that this thing works, when you try to apply it in a different context, you get the bubble burst in your face, and you think uh, like you get to think, why is it not working now? Because it worked before, but the it is not the same.
The mix is different. Yeah.
So what I got to, let's say, discover between the two experiences is that manual being completely new, our performance marketing was branding the company. Like everything in performance marketing we put out had to be brand aligned. We had the color palette and things we could and we could not say. And the reach we achieved with performance marketing, because the LTV is such that you can afford high CACs, so you can achieve high reach. This was what was the branding of the company. Like we would do some brand activities on the side, like PR and stuff, but I reckon the majority of what made the brand aware in the UK public was performance marketing. And then on Bleach, on the other hand, you had the baseline built from all the brand activity over time, but performance marketing did work and did provide a big uplift when it was um, live and with increased spend. Like we would see the correlation between short-term brand activation, which was performance marketing, and sales. So these two things kind of started shaping my thinking between the brand and performance. And having the academic background, you talk about the FMCG world and how the share of voice, all these metrics, and you know being in a startup that's starting out like with VC funding and having to prove that you have the metrics in place to be a solid asset going forward, you don't really have the luxury to go after share of voice. Like you have to convert, so you're going to fight with low share of voice, but you're gonna have to go after the segment that's more prime to buy, which the digital platforms are great at.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And Michael, do you think it is possible to, I like what you said about kind of branding through performance marketing. Do you think it's possible to build a brand from performance marketing? So everything is optimized to a return, but it's still doing a good job of building a brand? Or do you think you still need to have those big brand plays that you can't necessarily do as a startup?
I mean, depending on your stage, I think align with your expectations with what it means to build a brand. Obviously, you're not going to build a Coca-Cola through performance marketing, but building a brand that's well known in your target segment and uh, becomes an asset in, let's say, the people's consideration set when choosing someone from your category. I think it's uh, more than feasible. Might not be the only way though, like, but performance marketing, let's say, again, a shortcut. but it won't beat, let's say, understanding your target segment, see where else their attention is to, partnering with the right influencers, where the attention is going, stuff like that. Maybe doing even offline stuff. But yeah, for most businesses, I'd say Facebook ads are relevant in any case.
Yeah.
Google is a bit different because there has to be intent.
Yeah, for sure. And it comes as a necessity, especially when you're a small startup. You don't really have the option anyway, so you might as well trying to do both. Optimize first for the results to get the traction that you need on the user side, but it doesn't hurt to build a little bit of the brand. Were you measuring brand metrics when you were doing that manual in some ways? Like, were you doing surveys or awareness type thing just to like prove it, or was it just an added bonus that you knew was happening and that was fine?
We had some surveys done from time to time, but the main thing we were tracking is the volume of brand searches.
Good one.
And have it over time. And this was another thing that was very key at manual. Like, we would do the things we needed to do, simplify them a lot, and just focus there. Like, when you interact with marketers on Twitter, on LinkedIn, they're gonna tell you all about these new exciting activities they're doing, because effectively the day-to-day isn't that exciting. Like, you have your playbook, you execute it, and you can talk about that every day. So yeah,
that's true.
We monitored it in the most lean way possible. Like, now the brand has evolved. Like, it's been close to 3 years that left or more.
Would you say you were like focusing on maybe a couple of channels, like you said, like really leaning on efficiencies where you found it, and then maybe doing a bit of testing on the side, or were you trying to grow more than like diversify early in your kind of channel mix?
We did test a lot of channels at manual, but no channel testing ever had the delusion, let's say, of going away from the duopoly Facebook and Google.
Yeah.
Like, we knew that this would be the 80%, and the Pareto principle is something that impacts me everywhere in my life, not just marketing. Like, we knew that we're testing for the extra 20% and finding some efficiency. So and we'd get quite creative with the channels we were testing. Like, we'd insert manual into, let's say, medical newsletters, doing affiliate deals, for example. Had dating apps, stuff like that. Especially when some Facebook and Instagram outages happened, there were people saying, "Oh, that serves you right for putting all your eggs in this basket." Like, that's a nonsensical comment. Like, the attention is there, you will have to go there. Like, you're not going to go to less efficient channels just in the name of diversifying and diminishing.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, performance marketing in general is just a game of fixing problems left, right, and center. So when a problem arises, like there's an update and things aren't working, you just have to fix it. You're never going to be like, oh, well, I'm not going to use Facebook anymore. Like, nobody stopped using Facebook after iOS 14. It's just like you have to find a way to fix it. So yeah, I completely agree with that point. But it's kind of, this question jars with what we were just talking about, dark funnels, and potentially, Michael, when you said that Bleach wasn't necessarily a performance marketing first brand, but I wonder what you think about attribution tools in general. And the reason why I'm asking that is because this morning Twitter's going crazy with Triple Whale has increased its price from like $50 to $1,500 or something crazy. And there seems to be so many people in the D2C space, talking up these products, constantly trying to test something that's going to like fix that attribution gap. Have you had any experience with that stuff? Have you used any of those tools? How do you think in general about the constant fight to fix that problem?
Controversial take. I really like Triple Whale, but I don't like Triple Whale for the attribution. I like Triple Whale for the operating system it gives you, like knowing the margins and everything, having them. But even Triple Whale, the way they attribute, it's still click-based. Maybe it catches a bit more than Facebook after iOS 14, but not everything is click attribution, and you still get to rely on the causal and And to be honest, like I'm very much on the keep it simple approach. Like if you're not spending 1 million per month, you don't have to do you don't have to get too sophisticated in attribution. You have your cost per channel, you have your channel attributed conversion, then you have your blended conversions. You measure that on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. It might be leaving, let's say, 1 or 2% of optimizations on the table, but this of 2% is not worth your time and attention when you have this whole business to build and things that will move the needle 20, 30, 100% exponential bets that you should be trying.
Yeah, I completely get that. I mean, if you're driving 1, 2, 300 sales a day and you're missing out 4 of them, it's not really going to make a difference to your business. But if you're driving 10,000 a day and you're missing out a couple of thousand, that's going to make a big difference. So yeah, I completely get where you're coming from there.
It depends on the stage of the company, and in both cases it makes sense. Like when you're spending millions and in optimization, getting laser focused on your marketing mix modeling and how you shift a budget that could be in the hundreds of thousands, then it's a completely sound decision, and it's a huge waste if you don't do it. On the other hand, it's a huge waste of your time and energy to focus on that when you have bigger problems.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think one of the people we're talking to right now is there's a guy called Frankie Akil, I think his name is. Yeah, he's building a mix modeling tool at the moment, getting some beta brands, beta testers, and we'll get him on the podcast. We'll do a specific attribution focused episode with him. I think that would be very useful.
I'll watch that from start to finish.
That could be the marker of success, Michael. You can just tell us from now on which ones you got to the end of, and we'll just optimize for that. I actually posted this morning something on my LinkedIn. A friend of mine reached out and he was like, I actually listened to your podcast and it was good. I was like, thanks, you really thanks for that. But it's good when you get those messages from people that are hard to please. That's great. So shout out to Rory on that one. If we can move on to Silverbird, and maybe I haven't used it, but I'm assuming there's a big kind of PLG product-led growth element to Silverbird, letting people come in. How has it been moving from, I guess, kind of switching into that world?
Yeah, it was very interesting, and I was hesitant to do that at first, but then the decision was like, I want to be, let's say, holistic growth marketer, not just be the DTC guy. So after 3 years in DTC, I had this challenge. What I found in B2B, coming back to B2B because I had it before, what I rediscovered is when you're doing performance marketing for B2B, there isn't this consensus that there exists in DTC. Like in DTC, everyone and their dog know they have to optimize for a conversion that's a purchase or add to cart for if you don't have enough data. In B2B, like I've seen a lot of campaigns run on traffic, clicks with the old notion of, let's say, 2016 Google and Facebook, that you drive traffic somewhere, you get them to convert. Like they haven't really got a memo how the most powerful targeting comes from the conversion event you target. So when I got there, I didn't even have let's say the proper tracking to even do that. So my first hire as a freelancer to sort out all the tracking in that funnel. Product has since stolen him off of me because he's that good. And making sure that I have the minimum viable things to be able to run performance campaigns. And that was, let's say, the focus in the first 3 months. I go running ads to a lead generation third-party website, but we weren't running ads to silverbird.com. So spending the first 3 months just fixing this, it gave me the insight of how much this optimizing for the right conversion event can make or break the growth engine. So you really put the funnel there at the heart of the engine. And what's interesting is with a product like Silverbird, which is not aimed at every business, like you have to be in international trade of physical goods, like you have to be transporting food goods internationally to be a viable case for us. Like if a marketing agency comes and wants to open Silverbird account, it will get rejected. Like we say, it's unfit industry because we're laser focused on that segment. So there's also the element of making sure that you get the volume of conversions, but you also get a high relevance of those. So what we did at some point was before the conversion event fired, we had to pre-qualify them to say that if you give us info about your business and you're not a fit, you don't get to fire the conversion event. So it was a way to strengthen the signal even while reducing the volume of it. So, and then moving on from that, we also saw that it was good to bring the relevant applications, but then closing them, it still needed sales involvement. And from that, at some point, I realized that this is now called product led with sales assist. There's a buzzword with everything, but yeah, that's what we do.
And how does that come into play? So the marketing qualifies users, brings them in. I guess the growth team take with the PLG stuff, make sure users are using the platform, and then that they kind of hand off to the sales team to do that final sales piece.
It really, I guess, depends on the type of client. If it's a client that are going to complete the application on their own, and they go through to a completed application, then we have our teams from compliance checking whether they're a viable customer because there's, it's fintech, there's legal stuff in the mix, etc. If they begin the application and they don't go through the end and it is a qualified application for us, then it's assigned to a salesperson and they get to work the lead. And like I said, these are examples of things that you have to think of to really move the needle in terms of your metrics. Like it wasn't attribution that got us there. We saw that there was intervention needed. We applied it, then CAC went down by 40%. That wouldn't have happened if I was even more sophisticated in attribution.
Interesting. Yeah, I love that. I think I especially like the thing about pre-qualification before you fire the conversion event, because I'm sure I was reading a post or something about doing that the other day, how it's difficult to, obviously you can't do it for every business, but it's difficult to pre-qualify before you move someone into a custom audience. And these days marketers are have got a bit lazy, and they have their conversion events in place and they don't really do anything with first party data. But to what you're saying, if you can pre-qualify with some kind of form or questionnaire before you fire the event, that does one job of that. But also I think people need to kind of go back. There's a common theme with lots of the discussions we have that is about like doing things how you actually did them like 5, 10, 15 years ago now, because of all the hurdles that we have to overcome. And one way of doing that is that you just get really laser focused on your first party data. So when people come in, you make sure you go through that list and you qualify them yourself before you feed that back into the system for like your lookalikes and your retargeting and all that, and or offline customer uploads and that kind of stuff. So I don't think people do that enough, but it's super interesting.
Yeah, we don't do that enough, and I think because not enough marketers do it, it's like a niche use case still. We don't have the education from the platforms, but both platforms offer the offline conversions functionality. I think it's, if we were digging into their analytics, we would see that it's used by a tiny fraction of the users, and probably the ones that spend the most too, like some sort of a very, let's say, sophisticated performance marketing infrastructure, but not for the ones who are starting out. So again, it comes down to what's the point where you need it, but I think it's definitely something that will see increased usage over time.
I think there is a link to that. There's still a big shift that needs to happen in B2B, where the marketing teams are often measured on MQLs, qualified leads, as opposed to what probably should be the KPIs always, which is pipeline created, like going further away from, like going further down the funnel, which goes back to what we're saying about pre-qualifying the leads. Because if you're, as a marketer, incentivized for volume, you're going to optimize towards that. It goes back to like our success is measured for your job, right? If your boss is telling you, I need as many MQLs as possible, you're going to take other decisions to do that. But if you're optimizing towards pipeline created, revenue, whatever you call it, you're not going to care too much about your MQLs. You're going to do as much as you can to pre-qualify and do things like that too.
It really depends on what type of B2B company you are and what the volume is. Like if you're an ABM play, I can imagine with the volume being low that MQL being the right targeting because the sales cycle are longer and you need to have a more short term. But in my case at Silverbird, I'm just looking at onboarded customers and customer acquisition cost, growing the one, decreasing the other, keeping the other growing slower than the volume. It doesn't make sense to do it differently because that's the business you're building. Like, and even going a layer beyond that, you also have to look at your LTV metrics and your payback, because it's one thing to onboard 100 small companies that might have some good use of the account, but they're not gonna pay back, and it's another thing. So sometimes it might even be beneficial to increase your CAC going after a segment that's more lucrative, that is going to. So that's then you get into these arguments with other marketers, and they try to imply that when you say these things, it's like saying CAC doesn't matter. Now, it 100% does matter, but there are nuances to these metrics, and these metrics aren't isolated on their own. Like CAC has to go together with LTV, conversion rate goes together with traffic. There's all these sorts of nuances, and understanding them takes a while. Like it's not obvious, right?
Yeah, you need to identify the levers to pull, right? If you can just increase across the board 10% of each of these small metrics, it all adds up. It all adds up to a lot.
And the next blog post I'm writing, just to add to that, I'm saying it's like the supply and demand curve, where if you go for a nominal, if you're incentivized by a nominal increase in conversion rate, and that's, let's say, your quarterly bonus, the easiest thing to do is just decrease the traffic coming in. So it's a false incentive. But what a conversion rate increase is one that when your CRO is such on the website that enables you to increase your traffic, maybe the nominal conversion rate that you will see is lower, but the fact that it is lower for double the traffic means it was actually a better conversion rate than the previous month, which had half the traffic with a 10% higher conversion rate. So these nuances are really fascinating.
Yeah, there's definitely a balancing act with all that stuff. And I remember I saw that post the other day, Michael. I thought it was really cool. It took me I had to read it, and I was like, do I understand? And I was like, yeah, okay, that makes complete sense. Dial back the traffic, and So with a product like Silverbird, and it kind of feeds into what we were talking about, the MQLs and going into product and making sure the user stays in the product. How much does retention come into play in terms of how much do you focus on retention? Or with a product like Silverbird, is it that once a customer comes in, they go through all the steps to become a user, they are kind of naturally retained to a certain extent?
It really depends on the customer profile. There are businesses that get Silverbird as an extra account, so we don't have a high share of their transaction. There are businesses that get Silverbird because they're in a big need state and we're unblocking their banking. These become like 100% Silverbird customers. It's not easy to identify. Like this would be like asking how desperate are you for a bank account, but there are, let's say, pointers where like I don't want to go into too much detail
Yeah.
because maybe competitors are listening, but there are attributes uh, in a business application that let us know whether the customer is likely to be a big one for us. Up to this point, we haven't got super sophisticated into uh, getting a different, let's say, treatment for those customers. But this is the next phase of growth, and what we envision is like this shall enable us to increase the CAC because of the LTV increase. But yeah, last year was all about growth, growing the user base 6 times.
Wow.
So we now have to keep that foot on the gas, but also look at the underlying efficiency.
Very cool.
That's really cool. 6 times. Just 6 times. No, we're done. I wanted to talk about career in growth and marketing, career progression, and how did you see your career so far? And then we can move into talking a little bit about the concept of the T-shaped marketer. And I think you've got a pretty interesting idea on that too. But yeah, let's dive into that a little bit more.
I mean, I think customer centricity is a mindset, even if you do the smallest marketing tasks. So, for new up and coming marketers, I would say this is the first thing to really embrace. I had such influences by my parents' store, who had a fruit and vegetable store back in the island in Greece. So I knew from a very young age that it's all about your customer. You have to treat them a certain way. You have to keep them coming back. They're not really buying your fruit and veg; they're buying your relationship. So I had, let's say, these things ingrained in my mind. Obviously, not as articulate as now. Uh, in terms of career, like you're likely going to start with something that's very tactical, administrative, hands-on, and this is something again to embrace. Like you're not going to jump into strategy and calling major shots. You have to really do the work there, even if the work seems disconnected with what the bottom line is. Uh, you if you're under a good leader, you're probably being tasked with that for a reason. Uh, the more you grow your career, I think you have to be mindful of how much what you're doing is impacting the bottom line, which is what brings you, what makes you critical inside the business, what makes you indispensable, what makes the business afraid of losing you. Uh, and in terms of, let's say, specialist and versus generalist, I think becoming a specialist and broadening it up is probably the best way because you are like if you specialize in, let's say, Google Ads back in the day, like I did, you earn the trust of the people that you can handle this thing. You build upon it, then you become a trustworthy person, a trustworthy executive in an organization that allows you to start venturing into other things. So yeah, I started from PPC, became a T-shaped marketer doing all the content marketing, SEO, paid social. Uh, some areas still untouched, but I know about them, even if I haven't done them myself. And what I'm saying for the next stage is what I was already observing, but put to words by Joanna Lord of Freeforge, who is also a professional influence to me. Shout out to her. It's like the new T-shaped marketer, like when it says T-shaped CMO or T-shaped executive. You have some visibility in all areas of the business, like product, operations, finance, uh, and your what you're double down on is marketing on its own, not an area of marketing. And I think, obviously, I'm not there yet, but getting to head up marketing, you have to interact with finance, you have to interact with operations, you have to interact with product. It kind of happens on its own, and when you're proactive about it, and especially with finance, you get to see, and we have this historically, let's say, adversarial position with finance, but when in fact they should be our best friend. This is controversial because that's how we get the buy-in to spend more. It has to be down to the let's say to the bottom line, why you get more spend and more buying for your activities. And at the end of the day, what even the old age marketers would say, when you build a brand, you build a commercial asset, something that you're going to put into your balance sheet. So yeah, calling for another end of this point.
I love that concept. Actually, I never thought of it like that before. So you're a T-shaped marketer or any discipline, T-shape, whatever, and then as you, I guess, climb up the ranks or whatever, that T kind of zooms out and you just become a T-shaped executive with your T going down into marketing. I love that concept. It's really cool.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Credit to John. I'm not going to take any credit for that, but yeah. It stuck with me the first time.
Yeah,
it's great.
Yeah, it resonates a lot. I think across all the teams that a company can have, the thing that I'm also learning on that front, but the thing that kind of strikes me every time is trying to like over communicate on all department that kind of everything is marketing, and if you start talking to finance, to ops, to like whatever the teams, they realize that most of the time it's just that they have just no idea of their jobs impacting either the customer or what marketing is in general, like the representation of what the brand is outside is impacted by some of the things that they will be doing. And so that's one side, and the other side is also just explaining why we would do something specific, like a campaign or whatever. Like there's a lot of just over communicating all the time, becoming I hate that term. You know, when they call like, I think at LinkedIn they've got like evangelists. You know, I hate that term, but I think I prefer cheerleader. Becoming like the biggest cheerleader of the company, just the guy who never shuts up on Slack. But I think it starts with that.
In university, I had a professor, late George Avlonitis, the guru of marketing in Greece, and he said that he would call us to, when you get out of the university and you go into your careers, you have to become missionaries of marketing.
Yeah, I love that.
Nice.
Yeah, it's very cool.
If you were to start this year your career, what would be your specialty? Where would you start?
I think I'd go agency side again, and this time do Facebook ads, not Google ads. I think Google has taken a lot of the things out of the marketers' hands. So yeah, I'd go do that and have a close, let's say, coordination between the website, the creative, and the performance. And I think that would be the shortcut I'd go after at this point.
Yeah, I like that. What would you do, Yo?
I think similar answer. I would go back agency side as well to begin with. But I'll probably pick TikTok as the first channel. I would lean towards TikTok plus creator / influencer combined, like really nailing that process and becoming the guy in the team or in the agency that just nails the end-to-end relationship of like filtering the influencers we need, do the communication all the way to like the payment, the contract, and then running the Spark ads on TikTok. Like if you like nail that kind of A to Z process on TikTok, I think you can go very far, because there are going to be millions of startups and founders that would be looking for that one particular thing, whether it's on DTC or apps, fintech, for example, that works as well. What about you, Jake?
I'm going to follow you guys' trend. I think definitely start agency. I started agency as well, and then went client side. I think when you start agency, you kind of get to a point where you're like, now I want to have that deeper visibility of what goes on that isn't in my remit of that kind of agency relationship. And also, you kind of feel like if you do something really well agency side, then the person your agency contact is getting all the credit internally on their side, and you're like, I want some of that credit. You don't get some of that internal credit. But I think I would specifically go for an agency. So Hex, where I work now, we focus on startups. So we're a growth agent, a product and growth agency for startups. And I think the interesting thing about doing an agency that works with startups, so you get that kind of rich visibility across a business that I said that you don't necessarily get at a bigger agency, but without the risk of being in-house at a startup and potentially losing your job in 6 months' time. So I think that's quite nice. You can see the whole end-to-end process and when you're working with startups.
Exactly. I think it's funny that we all said starting at an agency. I think the thing that was true for me, at least, is because you get exposed to potentially different industries, different verticals. Even if you're just running one portion of one thing and you don't get the credit because you're, like you said, Jake, you're like a cog in the agency, you get to see the ins and out of different businesses and the ones that work better than others. Mm-hmm. And that might allow you to pick better when you go client side. You're like, okay, this vertical work, like they're smashing it. I want to do that. I think that helps for that reason as well. Because if you start client side and it's your first job, you have no idea, like you probably don't really know that much about the business side of things, the finance side, like we said, the ops, the margins. You might try and do stuff, but you might not survive, but also it might just never be something meaningful because you just don't have enough information. So
definitely.
Yeah.
Plus agency side, you get agency perks like free snacks and stuff that you don't necessarily get, or I haven't necessarily had so much when I've been internal.
Ping pong tables and shit like that. It's awesome.
All that stuff that moves the needle.
I mean, for me, starting in an agency meant that I would get my laptop and work at a local coffee shop in Chios, Greece. So every environment is different. When I did that in 2016, no one would do that. Like you were a dork for going in a coffee shop with your laptop.
Now you can't get a seat in a coffee shop because everybody's sitting in there with their laptop. Well, maybe we should talk about that a little bit to kind of round up. So we're coming up to the hour. Everyone's been working from home, at least in the UK, for the last two years now, I guess, maybe a bit more, maybe almost coming up to 3. Now the discussion is turning to, does that work? Should we shift back to like 3-4 days back in the office? I guess, Michael, you would say no, because that has just historically not been what you do. But just keen to get you guys' thoughts on the future of work and where it might go from here. If you consider like 5 years ago, if someone said in 5 years' time, everybody effectively will be working from home, you wouldn't believe it, but it took such a big catalyst like COVID to like kick that off. I wonder where the future is going to be.
I think for me, surprisingly, I prefer going to the office. Like I prefer having it in the week. So I think hybrid is the way to go. I think it's hard to build a company when you're completely remote. It's doable, and we have examples that show it. But I think a lot of things get sped up with in-person communications, impromptu conversations, and the visibility on other departments. I think there is some merit to it. I think the good thing for employees is that the competition for talent is fierce. So it means that no one can really force you to go 5 days now, which is very empowering. And I do think that, we kind of knew before when we were all going to the office, just sitting on our laptops, on our screens, that it was doable to do it. I think balance is key, to be honest. I don't think, I guess the extreme on the remote side can work. The extreme of on in the office side, I don't think it works anymore. It looks like a relic, and it's a signal of a company that's backwards thinking. But yeah, I'd say hybrid probably the best of both worlds.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I agree. Hybrid as well. We're seeing. I'm seeing the extreme fully remote situation at Nude because we never had an office. Managed to grow that far without it, but in some cases, for some projects, that we would be a lot more efficient. It would just be in a room for like a few days and just crack on a whiteboard and just get through it. Especially for like product growth stuff, like when you have to align with product and the engineers and stuff. So we do see some limitations on that, and we're still fast, but it also take a particular set of skills, or I'm sounding like Liam Neeson now, to to work fully remote. Like it takes discipline. If you never go to an office to get the work done, it takes a lot of discipline. So yeah, I think hybrid is the way to build the team connection, but also to get some like deeper project work where you just smash those things. Like, it'll be really hard today to start a company if you take 3 people who are fully remote and 3 people who are in the same room all the time to beat them, because they'll just go way faster than you. Maybe it applies more to like software development and like things like that, but I think it's pretty much the case for anything. Maybe some exceptions.
Yeah, I agree.
Anyway.
Yeah, I think the head down work, getting your head down and just like getting through a task, being remote or at home where you don't have those distractions, it can be really empowering. But yeah, when it's something that requires multiple people feeding in, you can't be just getting around the table and hammering it out. Well, we've hit the hour, Michael. We don't want to keep you for too long. I'm sure you've probably got some other stuff to do other than talk to us on the podcast.
It was a very enjoyable start of the day, and it's the sort of conversation that you could have even without the recording. Very happy to create content with you guys.
Yeah, that was awesome. Thank you, Michael. Yeah.
Excellent to have you on. Great chat, and we'll speak soon.
Peace.
Cheers.
I'm always surprised, like how deep we can go into, or like the guests can go into a topic, and I'm like, this is awesome. Like, let's just talk for an hour.
How'd you like this, by the way?
What's that? Oh, where did you get that?
Primark.
Yeah, I do like it. That's cool. What is it at the back? Just Barbie?
Barbie. Yeah.